Hey, we're back with the Castro Valley News podcast, and we've got Alameda County Sheriff Sergeant Ray Kelly. Welcome back, Ray.
How you doing, Robert? Good to be back on the show.
Doing good. How are you?
We're good. We're good. We had a busy week this week. Last couple weeks have been busy. Getting ready for the summer, and summers are always a lot going on.
The hot weather is always an active time for you guys, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. You see us. Our calls start going up, and the weather definitely brings out more activity for us. So we're ready. We're ready. We're ready for whatever the summer brings us.
There you go. So let's start talking about the opioid exposure thing that's happening. There was one that happened recently in Castro Valley. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, this all started the other night in regards to we got phoned in possible auto burglary suspects casing cars in the McDonald's parking lot over there on Strobridge. Our deputies showed up and found several subjects in a car, possibly casing to do break-ins. During that interaction, we found out that several of them were on probation. We searched one of them. We found a loaded Glock handgun. There was a lot of drug paraphernalia, some other methamphetamine, some other controlled substances. But what was unique was that when our deputy reached in to the pants pocket of one of the suspects, and when he pulled the pocket out, we believe microscopic particles of some type of opioid, likely fentanyl, went airborne, aerosolized, and somehow he inhaled those. He began to feel woozy, is what I'm told. Rapid heartbeat, started sweating, having a hard time breathing. He sat down. His partners immediately recognized that he might have been exposed to some type of opioid. Luckily, about a year and a half ago, we started our Narcan program, and so all our deputies carry Narcan on them. So one of our deputies came up, administered a dose of Narcan to our deputy. Seemed to work initially, start to reverse the effects. A couple minutes later, he began to feel ill again. We administered a second dose, and that second dose seemed to work, and then we got him to the hospital. Once he got to the hospital, we had to decontaminate him, take his clothes, put him in a shower. It's possible that maybe a nurse at the hospital also got contaminated. She began to feel ill, and so upon the search and talking to the suspects, we learned that they were fentanyl users. They had fentanyl test strips in their drug kit. And so this is the third time in the last year that we've had a deputy or a sergeant exposed to suspected fentanyl. And so not trying to cause any fear or panic, but it's definitely become something that we have not had to deal with in the past.
Now, is this stuff in powder form or liquid or?
It's usually a powder. We just took off several ounces of pure fentanyl the other day, which it's usually cut into heroin, but we're seeing it the fentanyl cut into methamphetamine and cocaine and other drugs, and it's a very powerful drug, and it's not fentanyl like you would get if you were in a medical setting. Like if you broke your arm and you went to the emergency room, they might give you fentanyl for the pain. That fentanyl is very different than the illicit street fentanyl that we're dealing with, that's coming in, that's being manufactured illegally overseas and then shipped in through our southern border and then arriving on the streets of America. So we're talking about a different type of substance, an illicit substance that's being put into drugs to further addict people and to make the high, more of a high.
So is this stuff really popular on the street?
Yeah, I mean, this trend started out on the East Coast and went to the Midwest and decimated a lot of communities in the Midwest in particular. And then we saw the wave coming our way, and it's here. It's been in California, but now we're seeing it on a regular basis. Where in a couple of years ago we were just running into it here and there. Now we're running into it constantly, and it's changed the way we do business. We don't really test drugs the way we used to. We don't handle drugs the way we used to. We have to take protective precautions that once didn't exist. And basically, you have to treat controlled substances and drugs as a hazardous material now. So it's changed the way we operate, for sure.
So, what are some of the protective measures? You mentioned that you guys are carrying Narcan. What are some of the other things that you guys are doing to counter this potentially dangerous exposure?
So yeah, I mean, one of the things we're doing is all of our deputies are carrying the N95 mask, and then gloves. Those are the basic level of personal protective equipment that you can use, or PPE as we call it. And then with the substances, if you suspect it to be fentanyl or heroin, we don't open packages. We have a spectrometer, a way to determine if it is drugs. But back in the day when I was testing drugs and arresting suspects, we used to use what were called NIC tests, which were reagent kits, and you put a little bit of the powder or substance in the kit, and you break these little ampules, and then it turns a certain color, and that kind of confirmed that you had drugs. But we've had to move away from that because now these drugs react with the test kits and can make it a more dangerous situation. So a lot of the things that worked in the past don't work anymore, and so we've had to change the way we do business. And when our narcotics officers go and do investigations, they have to gear up and prepare for hazardous material type exposures.
Are there any precautions that the general public should take in case they are exposed to this stuff?
So why we're seeing, so we deal with obviously an element of the population that has addiction, substance abuse issues. So every day, people that don't come in contact with this type of stuff are not at risk. They're not at risk the way that first responders and medical professionals are. So because of the job that we do, firefighters, paramedics, law enforcement who come into contact with patients who are substance users have a more higher risk of being exposed. So the only thing in regards to our community where people should be concerned is if you have a family member that is a user, and there are a lot of family members out there that are users, you can go to your family physician and ask for a prescription for Narcan and keep that handy so that you have it available should your loved one have an overdose or should you accidentally be exposed. But you need to get educated on that. So that's a conversation that you should have with your family physician. And there's a lot of nonprofit and community-based organizations out there that will provide the Narcan and the training if people are interested. But if you're not dealing with that issue in your family or with a loved one, then it's probably not an issue that's really going to affect you per se. And I know people have talked about, well, what if this stuff's in an area that I end up going into? We haven't really seen any incidents like that where there's been contamination that was left over that caused any type of reactions. All of the incidents we've had have been direct contact.
Gotcha. Because I did see a few comments on the Facebook page where people were saying that to be cautious by wiping down shopping carts and such like that. So that's...
Yeah, I mean, so we don't want to cause a hysteria out there. And there's, there's people that believe that some of this scientifically is not possible. I've had a lot of people call me, medical experts, who tell me these events that have happened many of them have happened throughout the nation where there's been exposures. They say that it's not possible, that it's not transdermal, that it can't happen. But then I ask them, why does it keep happening? Why have we now had 3 events in the last year? And like I said, we're not dealing with pharmaceutical grade fentanyl. We're dealing with illicit street fentanyl. And so there's so many unknowns out there. But I don't think that people should go about their life every day worried that they're going to be exposed to microscopic particles of fentanyl. I think wiping down your shopping cart when you get to the store is not a bad idea to do anyway because of germs and what other exposures you can get. But I don't want people worrying out there. We don't want people worrying about unnecessary putting undue stress on themselves. It's something that we in the first responder and medical community have to be more concerned with. And like I said, if you are a part of that group of community members that has a family member that's addicted or does use fentanyl or heroin-based substances, or any other controlled substances for that matter.
How is the Narcan administered?
So we use the nasal spray. So that's the most effective way for us to administer it. And so basically, if the person's either conscious or unconscious, you put it up to their nostril, just like you would a nasal spray for like people are doing right now with the allergy season being here. So it's similar to any typical nasal spray, and your body absorbs that through your membranes, and then it begins to basically be the antidote to the substance. And what we found is that people who don't use opioids, people who are young, healthy, like a lot of our deputies, they need higher doses of the Narcan, whereas an addict needs a lower dose of Narcan to reverse the effects. So people who are not opioid users don't have the tolerance levels that substance users do have.
Wow. So is this another thing that you guys are carrying on in your gear?
Yeah, we have it. Every deputy has it. We started out last year, I think, with about 250 doses, and then now we're up to about 1,000 doses. And so those 1,000 doses are in service every day, and they're on our deputies. We have to make sure that we carry them appropriately. Can't leave them in a hot trunk. Can't leave them out in the sun because they can degrade because they are medicine. So, and then they do have a shelf life, so we have to replace them and keep the stock supply fresh. But it's not an expensive endeavor to equip all the deputies with this. And what price do you put on a life? I mean, I think I think we can outfit the whole agency for around $20,000 to $25,000, which is not a lot of money, considering what the potential is for serious injury or death to our community members. And we have used this also several times on community members that have overdosed. And so I watched several body camera videos of us arriving on scene and before fire or paramedics and our deputies administering this and saving people's lives. So it's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the community. And then thirdly, we can actually use it on our dogs too. So our canine officers are carrying it just in case their dogs get exposed. And we use the same nasal spray. You just put it in the dog's nose and you can spray it right in the dog's nose and reverse the effects of the overdose in the dog.
That's great. So there was one in Castro Valley. Where did the other two instances happen where officers or where deputies or sergeants needed to have the Narcan administered?
So one was at Santa Rita Jail about a month ago, and that was in our booking center where an in custody came over the counter. During the search of that person, they found a chunk of what looked like a controlled substance in it, wrapped up in a piece of paper. When the deputy and the sergeant unfolded that piece of paper, trying to figure out exactly what was inside, they got exposed. The sergeant actually got very ill, and they administered Narcan to him. And then we had a very well publicized event of two of our undercover detectives that went into a hotel room in Hayward last year. Both of them became exposed. Our detective went unconscious, stopped breathing, and almost died, and we were able to administer the Narcan and save his life. So that's 3 events that we've had in the last year. So we've shared a lot of that information with other agencies. I know Sunnyvale recently had something similar, and we've seen similar other cases in other states.
So is this going to change how some of these controlled substances are handled when investigations are happening?
Yeah, so I mean, if we have known fentanyl type cases that we're working, we're absolutely going to go in with the proper protective equipment. And then the officers on the street have to make sure before they go to do a search, that they're putting on the masks and the gloves and taking those precautions. And hopefully, when we're talking to people, that they're being honest with us, because it's getting to be a little more dangerous.
Yeah. So are these people who are users of this controlled substance, and I know you mentioned this before, that most of your staff don't have the resistance level. Do these people build resistance against it and kind of fare better when they're exposed to it?
Yeah, so they do. They have a tolerance level, much like people who drink alcohol. People who consume a lot of alcohol, they have to drink a lot more alcohol than someone that doesn't to feel the effects. And it's the same goes with heroin and any type of opioid. So you build up a tolerance. Your body builds up a tolerance, and so the addicts fare far better than the non-addicts when it comes to exposure.
Now, are these people using this substance straight, or is it being cut with something else, or how is it being used?
Well, I mean, when drugs enter our community, and then by the time they get down to street level, they've been cut, diluted, have had different chemicals and things put into them, and so, the pure kilo that comes in from the drug lab quickly gets diluted, cut up, and is, by the time it gets down to street level, it's been diluted considerably. And now we're finding that fentanyl is so cheap and so readily available that they're cutting the drugs with fentanyl to get that high. And with that high, you get a good high. It doesn't last as long. And then it gets you very addicted, and then you have to return quicker to get more. And so it creates this cycle that continues. And so you have a supply and demand issue. And so the more drug dealers can get people hooked on drugs, and the faster that they can get them to return, the more money they make. And that's what it all boils down to at the end of the day, is profits. And so all of this is well thought out by high-level drug traffickers, and it filters all the way down into our communities.
Do you know if our other local first responders are as prepared as you guys are? Alameda County Fire, BART Police, CHP, are they also being equipped with Narcan?
Yeah, they are, and our county, we're doing well. A lot of our agencies in the county, fire, the firefighters, paramedics already have this stuff on their rigs, and then a lot of our local law enforcement agencies are already going to this, already buying it, and we've been kind of an ambassador in regards to the national opioid epidemic for law enforcement. The federal government has reached out to us to say, hey, we'd really like you to share these stories. We'd really like you to educate and help us get the word out to the community and to other law enforcement agencies about how important it is to have Narcan and to have an opioid training and treatment program.
You just gave me a whole wealth of education on this. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I mean, and you can always, if you want to learn more about fentanyl, you can always go online. You can learn about the different types of fentanyl there is, and you'll see that this is a drug that is, in certain times, the way it's manufactured can be 1,000 times more stronger than heroin or morphine. So, and literally, like a sprinkle of salt or less is enough to kill a person or multiple people. So the several ounces we took off the other day would be lethal. You could, if it got aerosolized or got out into an environment, it could be very deadly. So this is just something new that we're having to deal with, and it's definitely been a game changer.
Sounds like it. Thank you so much for your time, Ray. I appreciate every time you come on here. You always educate me.
Oh, no problem, Robert. Anytime. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to contact us. And like I said, if you're concerned as well, talk to your family physician and talk to some of our groups that deal with addiction and this opioid crisis that we're dealing with.
Thanks again, Ray.
All righty.